I want to be very clear about something. I did this not because I'm antagonistic to the troops and the 4,000 guardsmen that are operating outside of this base, Joint Forces Training Base Los Alamitos here in Orange County, California. That's where the 4,000 guardsmen are acting against, the interests of the people in LA every day. And I did this not because I don't support the troops. I did it because I support the troops. And what I really want to make certain of is that, none of them make the wrong decision when they're given an unlawful order. Like my sign says, General Milley and Secretary of Defense Esper had to disobey one of Trump's unlawful orders in 2019 and in 2020 when he wanted to shoot unarmed protesters, right? Well, I want these young guardsmen, and most of them are extremely young, I want to fortify them with the courage, and I want them to be thinking about under what circumstances they will disobey an unlawful order. They have an obligation, they all know it. After the My Lai Massacre, a U.S. Court of Justice ruled that I was just following, a U.S. military tribunal ruled that just following orders was not a defense. And it was no more a defense for an American service member than it was at Nuremberg. And they said clearly that service members, U.S. service members, have a positive obligation to disobey any order they know or should know to be unlawful. And I want them to think about that because there's not a lot of support for that. They're all taught it in the military and they all know it, but it's such a hard thing to do when you're in the military. And so in the heat of the moment, I don't want them to make the wrong decision and do something like shoot unarmed, peaceful protesters and then have to live with that kind of a moral injury for the rest of their lives. Not to mention, I think these protests are going to grow and grow, and they must grow. And when they'll grow exponentially is when this junta, this pretend administration, these shocking plutocrats and dictators, when they resort to nothing but naked violence against unarmed Americans, that's when these protests will explode. And that's been the avenue where, people have fought for regime change in the Philippines, in the People's Revolution, and I remember it well. I was in the Philippines during that period as a Marine. It's the way the Orange Revolution was won again in the Ukraine to make that country a democracy and westward looking. This is the way the wall came down in Germany. The troops and the institutions of state violence determined that they weren't going to act against the people. And that's ultimately, I think, what's going to lead us to victory, because in the end, these guardsmen aren't going to side against the American people. I don't believe it.